Leicester were on a dreadful run and they've come to Tottenham and they've won the game. That is embarrassing for Tottenham Hotspur. It's embarrassing for Ange Postecoglou as well.
I mean, clearly the results aren't good enough. I think the manner of the performance, the manner of the defeats is what should be questioned.
I don't think that sacking him is the answer. He needs to show that he is willing to compromise, make them harder to beat when they don't have the resources, and find a way of instilling some sort of mental toughness into a team that can't stop throwing away leads.
At certain times I've watched Tottenham and thought they look the real deal. I have, against the best teams.
I think the issue you've got if you're Tottenham, there is a danger that just because you've chopped and changed managers, it's not really brought you any progress. You could end up standing by someone who isn't the right fit. The fact of the matter is, Daniel Levy's fired better managers than Ange Postecoglou.
Why have they not gone into the market to buy anyone? Is this because they haven't got the money to do it, or because they don't want to give that money an investment to Ange Postecoglou?
I do think he's been left short in the transfer market.
If you really back the manager, go and get him some players. Go and help him out.
It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface, Alex Crook, the chief football correspondent of talkSPORT, and Dean Ashton, FA Cup finalist with West Ham United. Thank God for Tottenham against Leicester City and the meltdown that happened after that game, because as Sundays go, it wasn't pretty, was it? It was a difficult day. Crookmeister is here. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good. Do you know what? I've got to say, watching Sir Steve Redgrave fall off his chair in the Dancing on Ice rehearsal was far more entertaining than at least 3 of those games on Sunday afternoon. There was some dreadful football, wasn't there? Thank heavens for Tottenham, as you say.
Dean Guns Blazing Ashton is back. Dean, did you ever take your FA Cup runners-up medal and go up to a hostile crowd and go, I've played in a final? A bit like Jamie Vardy did with his Premier League badge to the Tottenham fans after he scored yesterday. Did you ever do anything like that to incite the crowd?
I didn't, funny enough, and if you saw the runners-up medal, it is about the size of a 2p piece. It is pathetic, as it should be for a runners-up, but I can't help but like Jamie Vardy when he does that. He knows he's getting towards the end of his career as well, and every little moment he has, because they're giving him plenty of stick, he just thinks, I'm going to have my little moment. Brilliant.
I don't think Jamie Vardy got booked for turning around to the Tottenham fans and doing the Premier League sign. 1 for me, none for you. But Iliman Ndiaye managed to get booked for flapping his hands like a seagull. Apparently that was inciting the crowd. I think there's only one person who would have deserved a booking for inciting the crowd there. Crook, I know you would definitely do something like that, wouldn't you? If you win an SJA, you are definitely taking a picture with it next to your head and tweeting it to Fabrizio Romano.
Well, I did it to Ali McCoist the other night as United got that late winner against Rangers, partly because I was in a pub full of Rangers fans who were jumping up and down when they equalised, and I had to sort of sit on my hands when United got the winner. So Coisty got the brunt of that with a nice little picture of me raising a glass to him.
Indeed. Right, okay, let's kick into gear with Sunday's action and look back on what was a pivotal day for Postecoglou. Well, Leicester City, Dr. Tottenham will see you now. Spurs hand Leicester a first win in 8 games after taking the lead at home. They'd lost 7 in a row before then, Leicester City, but then they visited the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Now, Ange Postecoglou says he retains the support of the players, but Dean, should that be enough to keep him in position? Surely there's got to be more than that. There has to be a confidence from the board that he is approaching this project in the right way, not just a tacit acceptance that the players like him and give him a big hug at the full-time whistle. What was your view on what's going on at Tottenham?
I mean, clearly the results aren't good enough. There's no doubt about that, despite the injuries. But, Everton and Leicester in particular, I think the manner of the performance, the manner of the defeats is what should be questioned. If you look at the run of fixtures before that, it was an incredibly tough run of fixtures when you've got so many players injured. Look, I think it's for every individual, how they look at this. Personally, and I know they lost games when they had those players fit, but has Postecoglou had his fit defence and goalkeeper, midfield, has he had that for a long, sustained period where you can go, even when his best players, they're nowhere near good enough? I don't think he has. And the way he wants to play, you really need certain players, especially in certain positions, for it to work. And when they have been fit, and at certain times, I've watched Tottenham and thought they look the real deal. I have, against the best teams. So it depends whether you want to go, well, let's forget about the injuries. Let's just say the manager has lost the players and therefore we need to move on and get someone else. Who else? What other type of style? Wait until the players are fit. Or if you really back the manager, go and get him some players. Go and help him out. For me, it's a really difficult situation for him and for Tottenham and for the board and for the fans. I think it's a really crucial moment whether you stick with this manager that I think you've seen enough to say can compete at the top level with all his fit players, and maybe some more help if you go and do that for him in this window or in the summer. I wouldn't be pulling the trigger personally if it was me.
I don't think that sacking him is the answer, and I've said that here on this podcast a number of times. I've said it on talkSPORT as well. But I do think that he needs to show that he is willing to compromise, make them harder to beat when they don't have the resources, and find a way of instilling some sort of mental toughness into a team that can't stop throwing away leads. Not just making this sort of excuse or saying it's all okay because the players are giving everything. Saying it will get better when everyone's fit is not an excuse, is it, Crook? Because ultimately the records suggest that you're never going to get everybody fit, because the way that you play and the resources you've got means that you've never in a situation where everyone's 100%. And unless Spurs have everyone that is 100%, their squad's not deep enough.
No, and they're not even top of the injury table. I mean, you alluded to it on the Sunday session yesterday. Bournemouth had an entire first team watching from a TV gantry as they beat Nottingham Forest 5-0. They've not got a striker to play at the moment, and they've converted Dongo Watara into someone who can get a hat-trick in that game. I think the issue you've got, if you're Tottenham, there is a danger that just because you've chopped and changed managers, it's not really brought you any progress. You could end up standing by someone who isn't the right fit. I did that with Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. The fact of the matter is, Daniel Levy's fired better managers than Ange Postecoglou. Mauricio Pochettino took them to a Champions League final and got fired a few months later. Jose Mourinho was fired a few days before he was due to lead them out at Wembley in a cup final. Antonio Conte's body of work is better than Ange Postecoglou's when you look at his entire managerial CV. So as much as you can point to the injuries, and yes, I think he needs investment in this transfer window, he's not blameless either, because his stubbornness and his refusal to deviate from the way he wants to play has also been a factor, not only, I think, in some of the injuries they've got, because I think the players have struggled to live with the intensity that he wants his team to play at, and that high line particularly has caused defensive issues, but also it's led to them losing games. Doesn't matter how many first-team players you've got. Leicester were on a dreadful run, and they've come to Tottenham and they've won the game. That is embarrassing for Tottenham Hotspur. It's embarrassing for Ange Postecoglou as well.
And it's worth pointing out that they went to Hoffenheim in midweek and were 2-0 up and 3-1 up, and still contrived to make the whole evening a very nervy experience for those 3,000 Tottenham fans that went to Germany to follow them. I think the issue here is that the easy thing to say is that he has this approach and he doesn't change. I don't think that's true, actually, Dean. I think he has changed. He changed in the League Cup semi-final against Liverpool, made them more robust in midfield, made them harder to break down. I think he went away to Everton and changed to a back three. But the problem he has is that whenever he has tried to come up with a solution, that solution has actually made things worse 90% of the time, with the exception of that one game against Liverpool in the Cup. Even the match that they won against Manchester United in the League Cup quarter-final actually was absolute chaos. They could easily have lost that because mentally they don't have the capacity to deal with setbacks in games. Injuries certainly have been a problem, and they've been well documented. Why have they not gone into the market to buy anyone? And Crook's probably best place to answer this, actually. Daniel Levy, obviously heavily criticised, the object of the fans' ire yesterday. Is this because they haven't got the money to do it, or because they don't want to give that money and investment to Ange Postecoglou?
Well, only Levy knows the answer, and obviously we're never going to hear it because he doesn't do any media. But I think they did spend quite big in the summer. Obviously, broke their transfer record with the signing of Dominic Solanke. So PSR-wise, perhaps they're a little bit up against it. They were really close, I think, to getting, well, they thought they were really close to getting Kolo Muani before he went from PSG to Juventus. But actually, if you spoke to people close to Muani, I think Juventus was always his preferred option. They've looked at Brian Brobby.
Tottenham fans will tell you this has happened for time immemorium. The fact is that they get linked with massive players or big name characters, and then they just missed out.
Yeah, exactly. Brian Brobby is another they've looked at, but I think if he comes to the Premier League, he's more likely to choose West Ham at the moment because they're offering $100,000 a week. So if you can't compete wages-wise with West Ham, then you've got a problem. But, I mean, Postecoglou's been quite public about the fact he felt they needed another centre-forward before Solanke got injured. So I think that is a fouling on behalf of the board. Richarlison's back, but by all accounts, he was not really fit to play the second half and had to do it anyway because obviously they haven't got an alternative option. So I do think he's been left short in the transfer market. And actually, when that Solanke deal was going through, I spoke to someone high up at Bournemouth and he said, you do realise this is the first time that Daniel Levy in 20 years has paid £65 million for a player. And that tells you actually that when Pochettino got them to that Champions League final and got them regularly in the top four, they were punching above their weight because they don't compete financially with the other big boys.
Speak to the club and they will brief differently. They will say Daniel has released £600 million for players. The issue is that if you have a look at the latest Deloitte report, the wages to turnover ratio is one of the lowest in the top half of the table, if not the lowest by some margin in the top half of the table, which is why I think the fans get a little bit worked up. Let's talk more about James Maddison. Dean, have you ever missed a game in the Premier League that was crucial against your old team because you're feeling a little bit sore?
Definitely not, no. Strange, yeah. I think, usually what happens when you're on these sorts of runs in terms of results, then the feeling around the place gets worse and worse as that run continues. And then you start to maybe see the genuine cracks. Then you might see things regarding players that'll maybe surprise you, and it's not easy. That's where I think Tottenham have really lacked as well. Is Son is their captain. What a lovely, lovely human being he clearly is, but doesn't look like somebody that can galvanise the group. And then you're looking around at other players that when you really need, this is a time when you really, really need the strongest of characters, the players that you can really rely on, that can get other people and young players, by the way, because that is the recruitment model at the moment with Tottenham in the main is to you look at Bergvall in particular that's playing at the moment, and this sort of thing it doesn't help. It really shows you as well, I think, in these moments more, and it'll show the manager, it'll show the ownership who you really can rely on and who are the players that you think, yes, for the future and going forwards, they're the type of players we want at the football club.
We don't know what happened here, but if you're sort of an amateur detective working off social media, putting things together, the facts are James Maddison's a big personality. James Maddison can help this team. James Maddison hasn't played as much football as some of the other characters in that team. James Maddison, I think, initiated a conversation at the beginning of the sort of day where he suggested he was playing in the team or certainly was going to the match. And then the bench comes out and he's not even on that. And there's one space missing. Now, Perry Grove suggested that he thinks, because the explanation was so vague and weak from Postecoglou about the absence of James Maddison, that he thinks something went on. We don't know whether that is the case or not. But, if you put all of those factors together, you do add up 2 and 2 and maybe get 5, but probably closer to 4.
Yeah, I think there's been murmurings for some time that maybe Maddison and Postecoglou don't enjoy the most harmonious of relationships. And you've got to ask the question. I think he's still, if not their leading goal scorer, then certainly right up there, James Maddison, this season. If you're losing games with the regularity that Spurs are, can you really afford to be without a player of his talent? Yes, he's a little bit of a maverick. I think that's why probably he's not played as much for England, certainly under Gareth Southgate, as he would have liked. But he's a talented boy, and I think he has got that personality that Dean is talking about that Tottenham are sadly lacking. So I think there is more to this story than just Maddison being a little bit sore.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. He's got 9 goals already this season, Solanke 11, so he's a major source of goals for Tottenham Hotspur, but wasn't available for them yesterday. Congratulations to Ruud van Nistelrooy. He's been under the pump a little bit. Thought he had his team really well organised yesterday. And actually, the fact that they've moved out of the relegation zone as a result of that is a big sort of fillip. They ain't going to win many games. They're Leicester. They're not a very good team. They haven't got the quality to really compete regularly and consistently at this level. But they've done a good job to get themselves within touching distance. And actually, for all the talk that everyone has been spouting about that it's definitely going to be the 3 teams that came up that went down, well, there's a bit of a race going on now. There's 3 teams that could possibly stay up. 2 will go down and 1 of them will survive. Wolverhampton, Wanderers, Ipswich and Leicester City. Everybody else seems to be moving away, although Tottenham are doing their best to try and make it interesting. Manchester United beat Fulham by 1-0. Adrian Durham introed this game, Dean, with the words, Manchester United can always find a way to steal the headlines, even on a weekend of VAR controversy and Tottenham having a meltdown. Well, this game was the exception. It was so poor, they couldn't even do that, Dean. That was a rather jammy deflection, wasn't it, from Lisandro Martinez?
It was. I think I remember last season as well, very, very similar with Bruno scoring, and they always seem to do it against Fulham, who I thought were poor, actually, considering the standards they've set this season. But it felt really vital. Massively vital for the manager, for the players. I think you could see that in their reactions. Martinez in particular, I know he scored the goal, but in leading the passion side of things that I think's been lacking and's been really important. Collier obviously with an unbelievable clearance off the line,
impressive
as well. Look, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy at the moment. I personally think he's handled himself extremely well. When you think about the comments that he made that clearly made headlines in midweek, and the fact that Erik ten Hag would gloss over what was so clear for everybody to see, I thought it was really refreshing actually that Amorim, just came out and said what everybody can see and everyone can, knows with Manchester United at the moment, but it's clear that he's got his head down. He wants to work hard on the training pitch with the team. It's not going to be pretty, but they got the job done in the end, and I quite admire that.
He's got a little bit of the Jose Mourinho's about him, hasn't he? And you mentioned the comments last week where he put in a little bit of a truth bomb and then backtracked about it. We're the worst team in history. Oh no, I was just emotional. But didn't exactly look as if he really meant that he was taking it back. And then this week he said, I'd rather put a 63-year-old goalkeeping coach on the bench than Marcus Rashford. I mean, it's not as if he's trying to avoid the headlines, is it? I mean, he didn't actually say that. What he actually said was, it was talking about why Rashford wasn't in the squad. I think he's probably getting fed up someone asking him every single time the game goes on. I mean, he isn't going to be in the squad. It's over. It's finished. He will leave at some point. If it takes a year, it takes a year. And good, by the way. I hope they stick to that. Because once you've made a decision like that, you've got to back the manager, and that's it. Whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. The fact is, if the manager's made the decision, then they have to stick to that. He said, it's the same. It's always the same reason. The reason is training. The way I see the footballers should do in training, in life, I think that's the key word there. It's every day. It's every detail. So if things don't change, I will not change. It's the same situation for every player. If you do the maximum, you do the right things, we can use every player. And if you see today the bench, we miss a little bit of pace to go and change the game, move some pieces, but I prefer it like that. I will put Vital on the bench. Vital, he is the 63-year-old goalkeeping coach, Jorge Vital. Before I put a player on that doesn't give the maximum every day. So I will not change in that department. So he's pretty clear that there is no route back for Marcus Rashford unless he completely changes the way he's behaving off the pitch and on it.
And I'll back him, Ruben Amorim, because I think part of the issues that United have had is that they've protected Marcus Rashford for too long. Certainly Eric Ten Hag did that. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to a certain extent as well. Ruben Amorim has clearly been told about some of the things that have been going on, and he's seen it for his own eyes, and he doesn't think Marcus is performing in training and looking after himself the way that he should be. So there's only one person who can change that. As we sit here, I'm not sure he's going to go out this month. AC Milan door is closed because of the Kyle Walker transfer. Borussia Dortmund don't have the funds to get anywhere near the sort of wages that United will want covering. Barcelona, Rashford wants to go there. I mean, I almost feel that would be like
Dean Ashton wants
child.
to go there.
Well, exactly.
Everyone
That's what
wants
I'm saying.
to go there. I mean, come on. I mean, my kid would love to play for Barcelona, but they've probably got about as much chance because they haven't got one. They haven't got any money. They couldn't sign Dani Olmo. He is actually their player. They had to do some sort of deal with La Liga in order to get the second half of the season registered to his contract. There's obviously a serious issue there. There has been for a very, very long time. The idea that they've got 300 grand a week to spend on Marcus Rashford is fanciful. And why would they want to do that? Have you seen the Barcelona squad?
Well, yeah, exactly. There's no place for him there. So unless we get to a sort of Raheem Sterling deadline day situation where United are willing to pay the vast majority of his wages and he ends up at a West Ham or a Tottenham, I think he stays. And then it's up to him if he can force his way back. But it seems like it's going to take an awful long time and a lot of water to flow under the bridge for him to do that. And I do think initially I felt like Amorim was sort of the fool guy for the owners because they want to get him off the payroll. I think this is a manager's decision now. I think Ruben Amorim has taken ownership of the situation. Credit to him for that. But in terms of the game itself, yes, it was rubbish. Yes, it was boring. I don't mind that. Like Dino said, I think United showing a rare ability to go away from home and grind out a dull 1-0 victory. That's better than some of the roller coasters that we've watched recently. I mean, for entertainment, you'd rather watch a 3-1 win at home to Southampton. But for 80 minutes of that game, I was tearing my hair out. I actually felt quite relaxed listening to the commentary last night driving home.
It was quite interesting looking at you and hearing Ruben Amorim say that he is celebrating his 40th birthday today. So congratulations to him. But he said, actually, I've been at Manchester United for 3 months now, so it's 50 instead. And Crook I don't know if you've noticed this, but Crook has been in the market he needs a bit of Just for Men now because he's been going through the ringer with Manchester United for quite some time. His shade of hair colour is going rapidly towards the grey. I've tried to get him on the subscribe and save Amazon, but he's just not following my lead, Dean. I don't know why.
That's 2 marriages, 4 kids, being your best mate, and 35 years of watching United.
Quick word on some of the other things that happened on Sunday. West Ham Villa, 2 good goals actually. Jacob Ramsey's goal was pretty impressive. A worrying injury to Tyrone Mings. Villa playing Celtic in midweek, but they need to get one of John Duran or Ollie Watkins firing again and Morgan Rogers really, because they look as if they're running out of ideas going forward, Dean.
Yeah, they do a little bit. I think Ramsey being fit and available, I think, could really help. And if he can find a little bit of form to ease a little bit of pressure on Morgan Rogers, who, let's be honest, it's still really fresh for him, at this sort of level. Ollie Watkins and Duran, this story seems to run and run as if it's a brand new story that's never been seen before. It's stood the test of time, this theory that every forward thinks he's the best. Every forward has time when they start and maybe don't score, when they're on the bench and they come on and score. This is manager's dream, surely, to have 2 players that are fighting for the same position and that are hopefully pushing each other. The only issue is it pushing the players in a downward trajectory instead of pushing them to raise their levels, which it just seems to have dipped away. But he's got to be really strong, I think, Emery, with his decision making with that position, and make sure that the players understand certainly where they stand. And it's obvious that Watkins is the first choice, and I doubt Duran will go certainly in this window. But he doesn't change the team very often. So I think you are going to see these periods where they look tired because, again, he asks and demands a lot of his players and he very, very rarely changes them. So don't be surprised if they have these mini little dips or imperformances.
Okay. Tactically, I thought Graham Potter showed that he's got a bit of versatility and a bit of nous. He doesn't want to be scrapping and playing a mid block and then looking to try and counter attack, but must. Maybe that should be I don't know, maybe a bit of advice to some other managers in the league. Let's take a look at some of the other weekend action now, starting at the Etihad, where it was a tale of two debuts. Manchester City 3, Chelsea 1. Okay, did Chelsea lose this game because of a naive and shambolic second half performance, or did Manchester City win it, Dean?
I think it was more Chelsea, and I even saw it in the first half. I don't understand why the line was so high from
ridiculous.
Chelsea. It was just bizarre. The fact that Gvardiol was able just to run, make an arcing run and get in behind, probably 5-6 yards inside Chelsea's half, and then get through, and he just missed with the outside of his left foot before then obviously Núñez went through and the goal came from that position. And Haaland's goal, I found it bizarre, considering you're away at Manchester City. The way to play them, certainly at the moment, is to sit a little bit deeper, is to frustrate, is to then go and counter-attack against their fragile defence. I really didn't understand the performance from Maresca's Chelsea. I thought the whole game, I know second half was particularly poor, but even the first half, I didn't quite understand that logic.
Yes, I mean, because it's also a massive secret, isn't it, that Josko Gvardiol likes to come in from that left flank and get involved in goal-scoring positions, because he hardly ever scores. I mean, he's only the top-scoring defender in the Premier League since his debut. I mean, it would be sort of, not on my list to keep tabs on him. And also, it wouldn't be on my list to question the goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez, because no one has been pointing out that this guy's erratic and causes a few problems for his defence by his decision-making and serious number of errors. I mean, at least he wasn't at it again, Crook, this weekend.
Well, I think there's an argument to say that Chelsea's best goalkeeper is currently playing for Bournemouth. Kepa Arrizabalaga has really rebuilt his reputation there. Andoni Iraola.
Strasbourg's not doing too badly, and the other eight are all getting better by the minute sitting on the bench.
But, they're in for Garnacho, although they're yet to make a bid to Manchester United. But if they've got 60 million quid, buy a goalkeeper. Don't spend it on Garnacho. You've got so many wide players. It's clearly not an area you need to improve. It's the centre forward, although, Nicholas Jackson, good speed of thought from him to set up the opening goal. But Sanchez just costs you too many goals. And the issue with Chelsea is they never keep a clean sheet. And I've had a bet, actually, with one of our producer pals, massive Chelsea fans. I don't think Chelsea are finishing in the top four. They're on a really bad run of form. There's some good teams competing with them. And I can see them dropping, and I can see pressure on the shoulders of Enzo Maresca in the not-too-distant future, because that's what Chelsea do.
This is interesting, isn't it? Because I think you were the one who was trying to tell everybody that they're in the title race not so long ago. Now you're saying they're not even in the race for the top four. It's funny how things change. I was trying to get you to bite. I think at the same time I was saying to you, if they get into the top four, they've done a really good job, because that's their target for this season. But I think if they don't get into the top five, which will eventually get you into the Champions League this campaign, I do think he starts to come under pressure. And I thought he was going to come under pressure at the beginning of the season, because I almost has been used a little bit as the sort of hatchet man, isn't he? They've brought in all of these players, and they said to him, "Now you go and deal with it now." So he's been given the sort of job to sort of cull the squad into what it is now and try and make it better. He had to take the fall for not having Chalobah in the team, and now he's had to bring him back, although I didn't think his performance was particularly good on Saturday night. Both him and Colwell got absolutely ragdolled by Haaland. But then tactically, what do you expect? If you try and engage Haaland in a physical battle, you get too tight to him, Dean, you're going to love that, right? Okay, you know you're stronger than someone. You want them up and in your face, don't you?
Yes, I mean, certainly I preferred that, because, I'm a big unit and I wanted to be physically strong against my defender. The best defender I ever played against was Rio Ferdinand, who didn't want to do that, who stood a yard off you, who made you think mentally about where you needed to be, whether you needed to drop or come short. And then the reading of the game, because he gave himself a yard and a half away from you, was outstanding. And there was plenty of defenders that I preferred playing against, because you're able to be physically strong against them, manipulate them in that position. And Haaland's that perfect example of someone you have to keep at arm's length. If you get too close, he's too big a unit in terms of his physical attributes. If you think of his arms, the way he holds himself, there's just no point in trying to get too tight to him.
Absolutely. And also, just note again to any other manager who is a little bit too dogmatic in their approach. I don't know if you noticed it, but once they realised that Chelsea were playing this ridiculously high line, Ederson just kept pinging the ball up to Haaland and just causing absolute grief for the Chelsea backline. Just a warning, by the way, Crook, because I know that both of us were a bit critical of Robert Sanchez. I hear the sporting directors at Chelsea are very protective of him, to the point where they like to ring journalists up when they write a line linking Chelsea with another goalkeeper, or criticising his positioning or his performance. But they had to make a few calls today. Tale of two debuts, Kusanov and Marmoush. I thought Marmoush was very good. Kusanov had a really bad first 4 minutes and actually was lucky to make the half-time whistle. And it was only an act of pure, brilliant management that stopped Pep Guardiola taking him off at the break.
Yeah, but it's difficult, isn't it? It tells you where City are at, that they're signing a relatively young player, never played anywhere near this level before, and pitching him straight into a big game at home to Chelsea. So, yeah, I think that tells you that City are not in a brilliant place at this moment in time. And I felt for him. He's obviously going to go on and have a decent Premier League career, but in terms of debuts, it was nearly up there with John Woodgate, wasn't it?
Nearly, but not quite. And they won, which is good for him. So he sort of got away with it in the end. It was more sort of Patrice Evra, I thought. Wolverhampton Wanderers 0, Arsenal 1. Arsenal needed a win here, and they just about got it. Terrific goal from Calafiore. Really good finish, Dean. You would have been proud of that.
Excellent, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, if you watched him in Italy, he's got the technical ability when he drives forward to link and to play a pass, but also clearly can finish. If you think of that, the goal he scored against Manchester City, that was a brilliant left-footed curler. So get it on his left foot in and around the area, and he's clearly got the quality. And I thought it was really important, really, really important for Arsenal that as soon as Wolves had their red card, it was almost as if they had the time to go and get the winner. And again, a bit like Amorim, that game just felt like they had to, they just had to win it, with whatever it was going to take, and Calafiore coming up with the decent strike.
Yeah, both sides finished with 10 men. I mean, come on. This is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, the idea that Miles Lewis-Skelly should have been sent off for that is probably the worst decision I've seen in a very long time. Well, go on, you're going to tell me that he should be sent off. You clearly cannot go in this direction.
I'll tell you my rationale, okay? Because I've seen so much of it as if it's the worst VAR decision I've ever seen.
It is.
So, no, because think about it. Doherty's getting away. Right. Lewis Skelly has got no interest in the ball, as in zero. He is literally trying to take Doherty out to stop the attack.
Which happens every single week in the Premier League.
He goes in above the ankle on the side of the shin.
Right.
He's a fraction away. That breaks your ankle. It does. If you catch him properly in that position, the way he did, you break it. Yeah, but he still studied down the side of his ankle, and it was more of a glancing blow. I'll give him that. But it's a horrible challenge.
It is a horrible challenge.
It's a disgusting challenge.
Under the law of the game, it's a cynical challenge that breaks up a promising attack, which is a yellow card. There's no speed, there's no intensity, there's no excessive falls. It's not serious foul play. It doesn't. You've got to go back to the law itself. Whether you don't like it or like it, as a professional who's been kicked in that way, and I can understand it. Stuart Pearce is of a similar opinion to you in that he hates this sort of foul. But it is not a red card under the laws of the game as they stand. And the fact that Michael Oliver has given it as a surprise, the fact that VAR hasn't intervened is absolutely shocking, Dean.
Well, before Dean comes in on that, I tend to agree with you, Sam, and that, the wider public opinion that it was an absolute disgrace. I described it as a scandal. But then I spoke to someone at another Premier League club, and he told me that Howard Webb has briefed the referees that if the tackle is dangerous and you're making a professional foul, which is what it was because he was stopping as Dean said a counter-attack, then referees have been advised that is effectively 2 yellow cards and a red card offence. So
but he didn't give that. He gave
agreed.
one straight red
Yeah.
card for serious.
So would it have been
play.
different if he booked him twice?
Dean?
I just think the way it's been made out as if it's the worst decision, I just don't understand that. In real time, Michael Oliver sees that. If his view is that he sees that it's above the ankle, which it was, it's almost a stamp down on the ankle. But obviously, when you slow it down, the severity of the stamp is, it's more of a glancing blow. So we're talking about, endangering an opponent, which it did, by the way. We're just talking about a fraction away. If Doherty's foot is planted, we're talking about a different outcome. I just think Lewis Skelly, it's a terrible challenge that he's just trying to stop the counter-attack without any real thought about the player that he's tackling and the height in which he's tackling at. I don't mind people saying, I think it was a poor decision, but to say it's like the worst VAR decision I've ever seen, I'm not having that because of the height of the tackle, the way it was made, the force that went through it, albeit then it ended up being a glance, but we're talking about fractions here. That's my own opinion.
Okay.
But I think probably the VAR could easily have overturned it once you really slow it down. That's my opinion.
This is the view, right? I don't think it's the worst decision ever by Michael Oliver. I think it's a bad decision from Michael Oliver because I think he's too close. And although that sounds counterintuitive, you can get too close to a situation and not see the whole thing develop because you haven't got enough sort of distance from it. And it doesn't, sometimes you can be on top of an incident and that stops you from seeing the whole thing clearly.
I can't remember. Did Michael Oliver go and look at it or not? Was he literally just told he agreed?
And that's the thing. It was checked and cleared. This is why it's a bad decision from the VAR, because the VAR in those circumstances must have had some doubt, must have looked at it and gone, I'm not 100% with this. Now, there's two problems here. The IFAB protocol tells the VAR that he can only intervene if he believes it's a scandalous, clear error by the referee, right? I think he's made a clear error. I'm absolutely certain that it's a clear error, but you're not. So in which case, under the VAR protocol, the VAR doesn't intervene because it's not clear-cut, because Dean Ashton doesn't think it's a terrible decision, and I do. So we're sort of divided on that, okay? So the VAR, because he's only allowed to intervene with a clear error, doesn't say anything. What should happen is that under the IFAB protocol, there should be an option for the VAR to say, you might want to have another look at this, Michael, because I'm not 100% sure that this is a red card. I don't think it's a scandalous error. I can see why you've given it, but I think you should just take a second look, just for clarity's sake, so you're happy with your decision. But you can't do that, which is absolutely ludicrous, isn't it?
That's been a fouling with VAR, all the way along, because quite often second yellow card offences when it comes to a red card can be an issue as well. And they can't obviously get involved in that. So I still don't think it was a red card, by the way, before Arsenal fans, start atting me on social media. And we should say, obviously, the PGMOL had to release a statement yesterday talking about abuse and threats that Michael Oliver had suffered. We don't condone that. He's not deliberately tried to make a wrong decision. Referees don't go out to do that. He's just trying to do his job.
Totally, and it's ludicrous that they have to release a statement saying that. But why didn't they release a statement on Saturday night then saying that they had got it wrong and that it was a problem and that they would deal with it and then they would look at it, or that it was definitely the right decision and this is the reason why? Because if you communicate more openly with your viewpoint, Dean, you take the sting out of the event. If you wait until the next time that Howard Webb mics up and takes us through all the decisions, by which time all of the noise has died down and you've had to put up with all of that. I think they should have come out on the front foot at 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon and either back their man and explain why that was the case, or said, actually, we've made an error and we'll overturn the red card?
Yeah, because people have their own opinions anyway, and certainly Arsenal fans will never feel that it's a red card. But if you come out and explain the reasoning behind the decision, then at least that's there, and people can't just speculate and rumble on. But like I said, I had seen loads of, this is the worst VR decision I've ever seen, and I just think that is a joke that people would say that, considering the type of challenge it was, in my opinion.
Okay, let's move on to Bournemouth against... Actually, I want to just mention the Crystal Palace Brentford game from Sunday, when there was another weird decision. I didn't think it was a penalty. I don't think Nathan Collins gets whacked by Maxence Lacroix. I think he tries to pull out of the challenge and he goes down too easily. Dino?
I can't. These are the type of decisions that make me laugh, because I think they're really obvious, and it's obvious that Collins is waiting for the tiniest of touches before he throws himself to the floor, and I don't understand how you can't watch that on a replay and understand that's exactly what he's trying to do. And I agree with you. It was a daft decision.
There didn't seem to be any controversy about that. No one seemed to sort of get irritated by it either. I mean, that penalty changes the game. Obviously, the encroachment from Gahey is a problem, because he then comes in and plays the ball, which is an issue. If he'd just left it and it hit Mbeumo, it would have been a free kick. So he should never have got involved in that situation. Newcastle won the game against Bournemouth. Newcastle won their game at the weekend against Southampton. They lost against Bournemouth last week. But when you look at the fact that they conceded 4 against Bournemouth, and then they conceded against Saints, and then they almost conceded another one towards the end of the game, although Crook's not sure whether or not Cher ducked out of it because he knew that the player was offside or not. Does it give encouragement to Arsenal that they can claw back that League Cup semi-final?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I get where you're coming from, but Southampton scored against a run of play. Newcastle, for certainly the first 70 minutes, were streets ahead. Eddie Howe wasn't happy with the last half an hour because they did drop off a bit, but I think they knew the game was won. If Arsenal might score at St James's Park, but they're going to keep out Newcastle. They're going to stop Alexander Isak. I mean, that second goal was absolutely fantastic. The touch, the finish off the post, it reminded me a bit of Thierry Henry. Obviously, he wears the number 14 as well, Isak. So, no, I don't think Arsenal are going to overturn that deficit.
Bournemouth 5, Nottingham Forest 0. We picked this one out to be one of the games of the weekend. Well, Forest, well and truly, cherry crushed Dean Ashton. Could Iraola be the next Spurs boss?
Why at the moment would he want to do that? Other than for finances, I just think it's incredible what he's been able to do with that squad. Obviously, the 2 centre forwards being injured as well made no difference. It's the best performance I've seen away at Newcastle all season. To then follow it up, against an incredible Nottingham Forest defence that it has been this season, and score 5. They could have had a couple more. I think says exactly where they are. They are such a fantastic team that are the best pressing team in the league. And to get players that are very talented, but not of the level of some of the teams that they have played this season, and get them to be brave enough to go and press the way that they have, I think the manager has to take so much of the credit for that.
The statement of putting all of those injured players into the TV studio, having a little munch on the catering at Bournemouth whilst the game was going on, was quite interesting, wasn't it? I mean, look, a lot of people comparing it with Tottenham Hotspur, but Tottenham have got more games, they've gone deeper in cup competitions, and they're playing in Europe as well. So there is a little bit more demand on the Tottenham squad than there is on the Bournemouth squad. But Iraola has done a very, very good job juggling what is a significant injury list, and should be praised for that. I don't think you have to compare the two situations. You can just say he's done a really, really good job. There is 1 week to go before the transfer window closes. Let's do a quick roundup with the Crookster. Now, the Transfer Notebook podcast comes out every single week. Crookie sends out a little email as well. Let's quickly do some of the big stories that he thinks are going to develop over the next 7 days. Crookie, go for it.
Well, we've spoken about Marcus Rashford already, so we don't need to go over old ground there. But Alejandro Garnacho is an interesting one because we reported towards the back end of last week, Chelsea were ready to open talks with United about Garnacho. But I was just looking there. He played the full 90 minutes against Rangers. He's played the full 90 minutes in 2 of the last 3 Premier League games. I'm told the relationship between him and Amorim is really good, and that Amorim is just trying to find how he best suits his system. I think a lot of Manchester United fans would be very disappointed if this transfer happens. And as I already mentioned, I think if Chelsea are going to spend 60 million quid on a player, then maybe this is not one they need. So we'll keep an eye on that. The Evan Ferguson rumours are bubbling again. A lot of Premier League interest in him. Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, who might just have the edge because Graham Potter, of course, managed Ferguson at Brighton, and Brighton will make a late decision on whether to let him go out on loan or not. I'm keeping an eye on Brian Brobby at West Ham as well. I was told on Friday that deal was as good as done. I think personal terms agreed between Brobby and West Ham, £100,000 a week they're offering. The issue is that they want to take him on a straight loan. Ajax wants some money or at least an obligation. But again, West Ham trying to get that deal done. I still think Manchester City are in the market for a defensive midfielder. That's obviously been a big issue for them since Rodri went. And then I keep thinking Forest are going to pull something out the bag because they're in a brilliant position, obviously hammered at the weekend, but they'll never get a better chance to qualify for the Champions League. And this is an owner who isn't afraid to dip into the transfer market. So I've just always had this gut feeling that we're going to be talking about Forest come the close of the window as well.
Garnacho, is his £60 million transfer fee pure profit? They signed him from Atletico Madrid in 2020 when he was 16 years of age. He went into the academy and didn't sign a professional contract until he was 2021. Does he count as an academy graduate, and therefore will the 60 million quid go straight to the bottom line? Because I can understand the financial aspect of it if they were to sell him for PSR reasons. I don't think I'd get it if they were selling him. I mean, I think he can be worth more than 60 million going forward. So I don't understand why you would do that right now, unless the manager was completely, as you say, not willing to use him. But he clearly is.
Yeah, and actually, he's given Sir Jim Ratcliffe a headache because he has started to pick him in the team just when they're entertaining the idea of selling him for PSR because it would be pure profit. And I don't know if you've seen the video on social media. Ratcliffe got a bit of stick from a group of United fans leaving Craven Cottage last night. There was some chants aimed at his direction during the game. And I think the majority of supporters would be very agitated if this academy player was allowed to be sold, because listen, I don't think he's the finished article by any means. I think he's still very raw. But I think with proper tutelage, he could be a really good player.
Okay. Dean, if you could, if there was one player that you think should move during the January transfer window, who would it be?
Duran to West Ham would be one, and also Visser to Forest. Crookie, has that gone quiet, or is that still something that
it was always quiet?
Yeah.
Brentford don't want to sell him. They don't want to sell him Bumo. I don't think they particularly want to sell Kevin Schade, although I think if Borussia Dortmund were looking at him, put enough money on the table, that would be the most likely. But yeah, Wisser and Bumo are protected species this month.
Oh, by the way, Dino, I bet you would have been proud of that Kevin Schade header, wouldn't you? Got a whack afterwards as well.
Yeah, and he took a nice whack to the face as well, proper.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah.
Dino, thank you very much for joining us. Burnley, who were Dean's tip to win the championship really early in the season. And I followed him. I put my money down. As soon as he said that, I went and put my money on Burnley. They take on Leeds, who are the current championship leaders, Monday night, live on talkSPORT 2. Tuesday night, Adrian Durham brings you kickoff. Millwall away at Portsmouth is live on talkSPORT 2. Wednesday night, what a night in the Champions League. Aston Villa Celtic, Manchester City against Club Brugge, all to play for. And Thursday night, Crookmeister. It's the Manchester United trying to scramble into that top 8. Tottenham trying to do it as well. What game are you doing? You're doing Man United, aren't you, on that against Steaua Bucharest?
Yeah, I actually said no at first because I had something in the diary, but the football editor was like, "Are you sure?" And I said, "No, okay."
What did you have in the diary?
I'll do the game.
What was it? A pool game? Was it a cricket?
It was a trip to Wincanton Races, which I'm hoping now is going to be rained off anyway. To be fair,
I mean, as if you could turn down Bucharest on a Thursday night. I'm going to Girona actually. tomorrow to do Arsenal in the Champions League, and then to do Tottenham at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to see what happens to them on Thursday night. That game, by the way, is live on talkSPORT. Looking forward to a big weekend of European football. Premier League is back next weekend. We'll be previewing it Thursday or Friday morning, depending on what the situation is. So stick around. Remember, our podcast is available from wherever you get your podcasts and on the talkSPORT app.